I wanted to talk about Brexit a little bit, okay? Because I know I have a few British people in my chat, and as much as I'm a proud Yankoid Amerifat, I do think every once in a while we should talk about what our former masters are doing over the Atlantic Ocean. Recently on LBC, which is like a political platform, it's political. I know they have do a lot of podcasts and radio programs, and in this instance, they seem to have a roundtable where they were talking about Brexit. The topic of how Brexit is doing came up, and Brexit is not doing very well. British inflation is a major issue. The British economy is in a much worse state than what it was a few years ago before Brexit. The vast majority of Brits now regret Brexit. A lot of the promises that were made by Brexiteers, like the idea that you would be saving billions of dollars for the NHS, has not materialized. The question of Northern Ireland was not asked during the Brexit campaign, and now the Good Friday Agreement was put into jeopardy by Brexit. I have seen personally, while crossing borders into the EU, how the Brits are pretty angry at the fact that without their EU passports now, traveling between the United Kingdom and the EU is a huge hassle. Trade between the United Kingdom and the EU has been complicated to no end. There's a million issues that have come with Brexit, and now it seems that the vast majority of the British public oppose Brexit and how it has affected their standard of living. With, I think, the last poll I saw, 65% of the British public being against Brexit now. So it does seem to be no longer a very popular political position to be a proud and strong Brexiteer. And so one of the Brexiteers decided to go on to a radio program on a debate show with some people who are anti-Brexit and start talking about Brexit. And when they ask, hey, you say Brexit isn't going that well, what was your alternative for Brexit, since you seem to be so critical of how it's going right now? They couldn't offer it and instead kind of waffled. Let's watch.
Lord save us, as the only representative of the majority of the Brexit
well, I'm too,
public.
but I can't get involved.
I don't want to rehash.
Tell us, how's it going?
I don't want to rehash this, the Brexit argument, but what I will say is it's pretty sick making the relish with which politicians enjoy describing and rubbing our nose in how bad they say it's all going. I don't think any Brexiteer with two brain cells to rub together thinks genuinely that we're in a rosy sunlit uplands, whatever it is.
Constructive change
And who
where
has?
you would take
hang on
Brexit.
a minute,
That's
Tobias.
the question.
Hang on a minute, Tobias. I haven't been in Westminster making the calls. I tell you, if I had, there'd be a lot of
you
things
just
that
said
were
you were a
different.
Brexiteer.
Yeah, but
we're
I
all
don't have any.
Brexiteers. We all are living with Brexit.
Hang on.
I'm saying this model of Brexit is not working. So tell us, how do we change it?
Let us speak.
I know. I'm used to Remainers shouting at me, and don't worry about
I'm not a Remainer.
But
I'm a post-Brexiteer. We're all post-Brexiteers. The fact that you label people...
let her speak, please.
But the thing is, as I was saying, I don't think anyone thinks we're living in a one that I've just described how bad the cost of living crisis is. No one thinks that things are going well. The point is, I'm not sat in the House of Commons making policy or making law. Part of the Brexit vote, the excitement of it was giving more democracy to ordinary people, to your average Joe and Jane. And unfortunately, what this government has done, and with no help from the opposition come from the sidelines, is make a complete hames of it, has made a total mess of any kind of potential that we could have had by spending, hang on a minute, by spending.
Now, here's the interesting part of this interaction, right? I don't want to do too many interruptions until this is over, but I think it's interesting that she acknowledges that things are not going well, and she is saying that the government, Nick Boris Johnson's government, Rishi Sunak's government, Theresa May's government, I guess the little reign of Liz Truss as well, that these governments have made a mess of Brexit, and now any opportunity to benefit off of Brexit and capitalize on this democracy movement, as she's painting it, it has been smashed up, right? But this assumes that there was a better path. Because the logical conclusion would be they tried to do Brexit, it failed, it's not doing well, it's hurting people's lives. It seems like the Remainers were right when it came to how it was going to affect costs of living. It seems like the Remainers were right when they talked about how it was going to affect the ability of British people to travel abroad. It seems like the Remainers were right when it comes to the economic effects of Brexit. Instead of jumping to that conclusion, which would be the logical conclusion, is that they tried Brexit, it was shit, and now maybe they should, you know, reverse the effects of Brexit. Instead, she's saying, well, there was the other path, but she has to outline that path. She needs to show that there was the other path. What is the other path? Now watch as they ask her for the other path, but the pressure just gets deflected.
I know you can laugh
But
at.
it was
hang
always
on,
going
laugh
to
at
be
how.
the Brexiteers'
hang on a
argument when it
second.
didn't work.
No.
Well, it could have worked if you'd done
If
it
you'd have
properly.
done that. So what would you do
God.
differently?
The scorn in this room is unbelievable.
No, we're
and actually,
constructive
to be
conversation.
serious for a second.
I'm
just
curious.
To be serious for a
You're
second.
not very curious because you won't let us speak.
The things that could have been differently is that you could have had politicians take seriously the exciting prospect of voting citizens wanting to be more involved in politics, looking at big things like sovereignty, big things like democracy, talking about how we could change British politics for the better. You know, that take back control slogan might have been slandered as some kind of ridiculous Nigel Farage side of the bus, whatever it is, and you can go down that route if you want. Or actually, if you cared about, as you seem to opine like you do, about the average person who, you say, oh, it's so bad, they're going to food banks, oh, it's so terrible, everyone's a hard time. If you actually cared about their political prospects and the future of their political lives, you would have taken seriously the challenge that Brexit set the British political class. Unfortunately, it has been squandered, and I'm miserable about that. But what I will not accept is that it's somehow our fault, that it's the fault of voters in Bolton or in Tottenham or other places where there's
Nobody has said that.
For you to sit here, hang on a minute.
Nobody has
Let me
said
finish
that.
the
You
point.
are putting words into people's mouths
you to
and
sit
then
here-
saying that they're our views
For
and
you
they
to
are
sit
not.
here and
This is
scoff,
ridiculous.
For you to sit here and scoff and say,
I'm not scoffing. I want to know
tell
what you
us
do
how it
better. I'm
went,
still
Ella.
asking this, but
Tell
Ian's
us
going to
how
tell me
it
to shut
went,
up again.
Ella.
I want to
It's
know what
pretty
will
great.
change.
But anyway, let's move on.
What will
I'm
change?
going to
What
shoot
will
I'm going to
myself.
tell you all to shut up.
Okay, so I wish I had access to the full clip, but I think we got enough out of this. So this is kind of a frustrating clip to watch, and I'm saying that as somebody outside of the United Kingdom who is not really feeling the effects of Brexit. Okay, I'm an American. Okay, I live in the USA, so Brexit didn't really affect me that much, but it's very clear that everybody in the room knows the negative effects that Brexit has had, and that all these positives that people talked about with Brexit, like saving all this money for the NHS, they seem to have dried up. They seem to have not have those many positive effects, and it seems to have been really botched, and it seems that a lot of people were not prepared for the Northern Irish question, and it seems that Brexit has had a negative effect on the lives of the vast majority of British people, and that's why now, if you look at any polling on Brexit, the vast majority of British people, like 65, 66, 67%, now believe Brexit was the wrong choice. A vast majority, we're talking 2/3 of the British public. 2/3 of the British public. And so her premise is that if they had only done it differently, if they had only truly capitalized on the democratization that Brexit provided the British people, it could have been so good. And so everybody else in the room says, okay, what is this alternative path? What are these positive things? Because I think of all the positive things that were said. Saving money for the NHS. That ended up not being true. Oh, getting sovereignty over their borders. Well, it seems that when it comes to the Northern Irish question, something that was not talked about leading up until Brexit, until afterwards, it seems that that has compromised that, because it's kind of hard to say that you have control of your borders. Definitely if you're moving the border into the ocean between the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland in order to compromise to fulfill the Good Friday Agreement, which used to be cradled by EU membership. We can go through all the positives that people talked about when it comes to Brexit, and the only one that people can really say now is, well, at least now it's easier for us to deal with the flow of migrants. And even that is questionable. Even that is questionable. And so you go through all the positives that were talked about before the election, before Brexit, and they've all turned into nothing. Brexit was just nationalist hogwash that offered nothing to the British people, and that's why they're responding accordingly. But that gets pointed out, and to a point, she even agrees with it But she says there is an alternative. When asked where that alternative is, because I don't really see the alternative, nobody else on the show sees the alternative. Rishi Sunak doesn't seem to see the alternative. Hell, Rishi Sunak, the current Prime Minister of Britain, doesn't just not see the alternative. He seems to acknowledge that EU membership, as well as being part of the British market, is the positive way to go. Actually, Ireland, Rishi Sunak, British market. I want to play this quote where the Prime Minister, the head of the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak, is basically acknowledging that being part of the EU and the British market is the best way to go. I need to see this clip, because this clip, I think, is the perfect clip to get my message across. Here it is. Listen to this. Listen to this and tell me how this is at all indistinguishable from just being in the EU, because he's saying that Northern Ireland gets one of the best deals in all of the UK by being part of the EU in a way and being part of the United Kingdom. But if they're getting the best deal, wouldn't it be better if that applied to the entirety of the United Kingdom? Listen to what he has to say.
If we get the executive back up and running here, Northern Ireland is in the unbelievably special position, unique position in the entire world, European continent, in having privileged access, not just to the UK home market, which is enormous, 5th biggest in the world, but also the European Union single market. Nobody else has that. No one. Only you guys, only here.
Everyone had that. Everyone had that pre-Brexit. Everybody from those in Northern Ireland to those in Scotland to those in Wales to those in England, everyone had that before.
And that is the prize. I can tell you, when I go around the world and talk to businesses, they know that. They're like, that's interesting. If you guys get this sorted, then we want to invest in Northern Ireland, because nowhere else does that exist. That's like the world's most exciting economic zone. It is a major breakthrough. It is an enormously positive step forward. And now I hope, as I said, everyone can take time to study it, see that, and then we can move forward together, put the division behind us, get an executive back up and running, and build a far brighter future for everyone in Northern Ireland. We're going to do that together, and I think it's going to be incredibly positive.
This is just a prime example of how a lot of the membership of the Conservative Party, the party members, didn't even like Brexit all that much as an idea. David Cameron, who was the person who had the Brexit referendum during his term, actually had the referendum because he didn't want to have to deal with the Brexit question anymore. He didn't want to have to deal with the question of leaving the EU anymore. And he thought by having a referendum, he could basically put a cap in it and be done with it. But then he got the results back that said, let's actually leave the European Union after a campaign fraught with lies and just complete nonsense. Like, for example, the bus that was going around telling everybody that they were going to save all this money on the NHS that never materialized. But Brexit wins, not only because of that, but also for other more reasons of nationalistic sentiment and control of the borders. And then he resigns because he doesn't want to carry it through because he was not in favor of Brexit. And now there's a bunch of people within the party who had to carry through Brexit who didn't even agree with Brexit. And Rishi Sunak feels like one of those people, because as he's talking about this great Brexit deal that he's gotten done, all the positives he's describing for Northern Ireland are just positives everyone could have had if the United Kingdom stayed in Brexit. The reason why that woman could not offer a better alternative is because there was no good path to Brexit, because all the paths to Brexit, all the paths that got the United Kingdom out of the EU was negative for the cost of living for the average British person, is negative when it comes to the question of the Northern Irish border, is negative when it comes to the future of the British Isles. And instead of accepting that fact, they'd like to have this mythical perfect Brexit in their head that would have actually resolved all their problems while also giving them their democratization movement that they want so bad in the United Kingdom. Just not existent. If they would have stayed in the EU, a lot of the problems they're facing now would either be less severe or non-existent at all.